Hi, this is Swapnil Bhartiya and we are here at openSUSE conference in Prague, Czech Republic, and we have with us our old friend Richard Brown.
Hi Swap.
Hi Richard, how are you doing?
All good, yes.
So how has been the conference so far?
Oh, it's been really, really good. So yeah, nice bunch of people here. Good. We've got a good bunch of sort of cross-distro stuff happening as well with the guys from Red Hat and Canonical that are here, and yeah, it's been going really well.
Tell us more about the cross-distro stuff.
Yeah, well, we've got there's the Red Hat Bruno office, so there's a good bunch of guys from sort of Fedora, a good cross-section of what they're doing, so some of the community managers are here. I was just in a talk now of GNOME Fleet Commander, so they're kind of IDM managing desktop profiles for your users, and yeah, trying to work with us to get that into openSUSE and well, working with that. And, yeah, it's good.
But today is one of the biggest announcements also that you forked.
Yeah, it's kind of, to complement that, yes, on the other side of things, yes, we're announcing a fork from a Red Hat project. So Spacewalk now has the Uni project, where, yeah, because we've been having a hard time getting the changes in SUSE that they need for SUSE Manager into Spacewalk. Yeah, openSUSE has a new member of the family, Uni. Yeah. Where that's where all those innovations are going to be, all of the SALT stuff, the new UI to Spacewalk, all of that's there baking. In fact, we have a workshop for that here tomorrow, where they've already got images working. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's really exciting, because that's been something. I was as a contributor years ago, way before I got this involved in openSUSE, I was trying to package Spacewalk for openSUSE, and it's always been the package that got away from me. Like I couldn't do it on my own. Mm-hmm. So it's lovely now, like years later, that it's like, yeah, it's finally being done right. And
yeah, I closed to this morning to understand everything about the project. While you're talking to packaging and all those stuff, I recall last openSUSE conference, you had a change of heart towards
towards AppImage. Well, yes and no. I mean, the whole kind of containerized application thing is an area of definite interest to me. Like I want those. I think those technologies, do need to be done right. And with Flatpak and Snap and AppImage, you've got sort of three different flavors of a very interesting place. And yeah, the way AppImage is being built, especially with its being able to build it inside OBS, it really took that a whole step forward from where I was before the conference. Now a year later, I had a Hack Week project at SUSE where I took Cubic and I turned it into a desktop, and I ran nothing but Flatpaks on this Cubic desktop. So it's still an area that I'm interested in experimenting with. That experiment kind of validated some of the concerns that I had, so I wouldn't recommend it for anybody yet. The ecosystem isn't there, but people are behind it, and they're contributing, they're moving there, and it's reminded me of something that I've been saying a lot lately. Like it's not the best technical solutions that win in open source anyway. It's the most motivated ones. And there's no doubt that there's motivations behind these, and people are pushing it. So it's going to be a thing, even if I like it or not.
So since we are talking about last year's conference, how much has changed between then and now?
I would say mostly roughly the same. I mean, in terms of number of people here and the like, it's roughly.
No, the same. I mean evolution of the project itself. How much changed within the project?
Oh, in terms of the project, yeah, tons. I mean, the last year we were kind of at the tail end of the kind of grand changes of the project. Like we spent a huge amount of time with like things like Leap and really getting used to Tumbleweed and that kind of thing. So there's like it's kind of the hangover from those kind of big, massive changes. And now the project's in a much more state of, we know what we are, we know what we're doing, we're drawing more and more people into the project. So figuring out how to do that better, how to do that faster, how to do that more efficiently, and just how to make that easier to kind of on-ramp that. That was kind of also, it's been something we've talked about a lot here this week, and also something in the board meeting, the annual board meeting we had this year. That was kind of the overarching topic there of like, kind of cleaning up some of the organizational debt of the bits and pieces we've forgotten to update the documentation on, and where we are today.
You mentioned the annual board meeting.
Yeah, the annual board meeting. So every year, SUSE sponsors a face-to-face board meeting. So we've got, an openSUSE board has 5 elected community members and myself. And so, we do everything online, obviously, video conferences every 2 weeks. But it's just nice sometimes to get everybody in a room and really flesh out, like, what's the collective board vision for the community, dealing with the kind of big ticket items, if we have any, of like the trickier structural stuff in the project and the sort of trickier big issues. So yeah, SUSE sponsors that. We normally have it in the Nuremberg office, but this time we just had our election. We were all coming to the Prague conference anyway, and there is a Prague office, so we moved it there. We've had 3 days hosted in the Prague office, sort of talking about all of this stuff. I mean, the big main ones really are properly reflecting the fact that openSUSE isn't just the distro project. The distro projects are core and sort of a huge sort of engine behind the whole thing. But we have more and more this sort of family of sub-projects. So we spend a lot of time thinking, like, how to do that properly, how to avoid some traps that other umbrella projects fell into. In our case, we're definitely open for other projects to join us, but we're not sort of actively soliciting that. We want to, if you think your project makes sense in the openSUSE umbrella, we'd love to have that. But we're not trying to diversify ourselves out of our kind of core competencies. We know what we're good at. We do building. We do testing. We build tools for people who know how to do building and testing. And then that's like where things like Uni come from. Like that's the new member of the family from that, and figuring out just sort of the basics and all the governance stuff around that, making sure that it's easy for them to on-ramp, get in, get started, get cracking.
Yeah, I think last time when we talked, you also said that you're also reworking on the mission statement as well, what openSUSE actually is. So have you finalized that, or?
Yeah, not absolutely finalized. One problem we had that kind of held back some of that kind of.
Just put that in the rolling release model. Why you're taking so long to just?
That's part of the thing is, given that we're an umbrella of many things, how do you quantify that? How do you tie all that together with something? We do have a proposal, we do have an idea, but it's an idea that really needs our openSUSE membership to vote behind. It's not something, with our charter being the written it is, the board could just make an executive decision and decide, but that's not the way we work. And until recently, from a technical perspective, we didn't have a voting platform we trusted for our membership to vote. The previous one all kind of bit-rotted and was very, very broken. But we've had our new election. We've used that new tool. We trust it now. So that's the last of the big changes that we deferred from last year, and you can expect it soon after this conference. But it's.
So are you sure you're just the way U.S. election was kind of influenced? Are you sure that Red Hat or Canonical are not influencing your votes?
Yeah, it's really easy to be sure with the openSUSE membership scheme. It's awesome because basically any contributor can be a member. They apply. We used to have this kind of long vetting process. We've trimmed it down, but basically the vetting process is still there to confirm you do contribute. We don't care where you're from when it comes to contributors. So there's no problem with Red Hat contributors or Canonical contributors. But we know who you are when you become a member. So it's not like free voting where anybody can just sweep in and change stuff. And then those are the people who are eligible to vote in these things. So it works nicely. Very similar to how the GNOME Foundation works with their membership scheme.
Right. So even if you have not finalized it, can you give us just a bit idea about what is your vision going to be?
I really will save that one for when we're talking about it on the mailing list.
When will you be talking about it?
A couple of weeks from now, just after the conference. I mean, roughly speaking, it's an expansion on the whole kind of the maker's choice tagline that you're seeing on the website right now. So, we're a project, a technical project for technical people interested in doing technical things with their software. We build distributions that work very, very well in that area. We build 2 different distributions, rolling or not rolling, depending on your pace. All of our other tools kind of fit into that same umbrella. All of the projects kind of fit under that same umbrella. So it's kind of the way it'll be worded and angled towards.
But you don't have 2. You have more than 2. You also have Cubic.
Well, Cubic is a fun one. Cubic is not really a different distribution. I'm talking about this right after we finish this presentation.
Okay.
Cool. No, I talked about it yesterday. Fun. So many talks, I forget when I'm doing it. So I talked about it yesterday. Cubic is the first of hope maybe many, of a Tumbleweed derivative, and it is 100% Tumbleweed. So if you want to modify Cubic, you have to modify Tumbleweed, but it has different media and it has different branding, and it's actually got a different focus. Where in the sense of Tumbleweed is a distribution for anything, Cubic is there as a container orchestration Kubernetes stack, but we're not splitting it into a different fork. We're not splitting it into a different spin of any sense. It's just a different media, all coming from the Tumbleweed base.
So which is the other distribution? Because you said there are two.
So it's Tumbleweed and Leap.
But Leap won't exist without Tumbleweed.
Yes, but it's a fair point. But yeah, so in the case of Cubic, it is exactly the same repositories.
Mm-hmm.
So we build the two together. There's one project in the build service. There's the ISOs come from the same binaries. It's all built in one consistent code.
Mm-hmm.
With Leap, with Leap you've got an intermediate step anyway.
Exactly.
Tumbleweed comes first. SUSE then take Tumbleweed and harden it for SLE.
Mm-hmm.
After SLE then makes all of their source code available. openSUSE then plays with it and turns that into Leap, augmenting it with stuff from Tumbleweed. So it's that kind of hybrid mix of both.
Yes, we talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Open 15 is out.
Yes, it's out. Yes.
So what has been the focus for this release? Because I think you are also shifting focus from something which was for everybody to something which is like targeted at, of course everybody can use any tool, but you have to this is a specialized tool for these professionals. So this release is targeting
but this release we've really gone that kind of route of targeting professionals, targeting sort of partners, ISVs, IHVs, the kind of thing, other people around that space we've been working with, and really going down that road kind of along that kind of draft mission statement that we'll be talking about later in the year. Getting that tune and out there for what they want to have.
So what was some of the main highlights of this release?
Well, so the first one that I'm really excited of when we started Leap 42, we had the general concept of basing it on SLE,
Mm-hmm.
but we had that it was a whole new thing, and the community had the freedom to, and they still do have the freedom. The community has the freedom to modify Leap to suit their needs. So we started with the SLE code base, but there was quite a bit of diffing and shuffling around of figuring out where is that happy medium of taking everything we can out of the enterprise side of things that makes sense, but then augmenting with the community stuff. And so 42.1 and 42.2 had a significant kind of deviation from SLE. 42.3 really smacked that down to a really manageable amount. And 15 really, I can say, is taking almost every possible thing that it could from SLE, and then still adding all that community stuff on top. And then that's really opened up doors, like to the point now where SUSE actually, as a fully supported option for SLE customers, can start with Leap and then upgrade to SLE in place as a migration step, which is that's just really cool. No one can do that. No one else does that with CentOS to RHEL or something like that. So that's really nice. And it's also made things a lot more interesting with adding some of the other features that we're doing, because it's just that easy kind of base for collaboration for both the openSUSE side and the corporate SUSE side.
Right. So whenever openSUSE Leap is released, there is always excitement.
Yep.
What about Tumbleweed?
There's excitement every day with Tumbleweed. It's always exciting.
Do you want Tumbleweed to become boring? As Kubernetes people say, hey, Kubernetes is boring now, because they want the platform itself to become boring so that people can do exciting things on top of that. So what is your focus? For
that kind of thing, okay. When before Leap had a name Leap, we joked that the name for openSUSE Leap should be openSUSE boring. That is our designed platform for that. When someone wants a stable platform so they can do the exciting stuff on top, Leap's built for that. Tumbleweed is really built for the kind of the distro enthusiast, the general upstream open source enthusiast. There's some project they're involved in. They want to get those packages quickly. They want to see how the whole open source world is moving fine. So Tumbleweed will never be boring. Tumbleweed will always be interesting and always moving at that kind of full pace. And there's times that kind of excitement gets kind of duplicated and amplified, like the last couple of weeks with Tumbleweed and Leap. We've all been developing really on both things, and the transactional server feature we put in, implemented that in both distributions at the same time. not the typical kind of Tumbleweed first and then Leap. But that's Tumbleweed's always going to be exciting. It's never going to get boring. It's just going to keep on getting more and more stable, though. But that's
stable means
different.
boring. Yeah, the stable is boring. One of the reasons why I liked rolling releases was quicker access to applications. Yeah. But I always wondered that either you take LibreOffice or any other open source application, whenever new release is out, it takes weeks, sometimes months, for it to be in the repository, official repository. Yeah. What I wonder is that if that project is open source, and we all know that an open source project doesn't mean that if the release is going to be announced at 5 p.m., they make the last change at 4:59. It's already in the freeze phase. So why is it not possible that open source projects can work together so that while it's still in the pre-release phase, or whatever, they should take it so the moment it's announced publicly, it's available in the repositories.
You've been talking to Dominic, haven't you?
What?
You've been talking to Dominic.
No, that has been my. If you know, okay, personally also privately we have.
The reason I ask is that you have just described the secret sauce to how openSUSE keeps on beating Arch when it comes to things like GNOME releases or like LibreOffice releases. So with Tumbleweed, you've just described exactly what our GNOME team does to make sure we can get GNOME out the door, like on the day of the upstream release. GNOME tell us when they're going, when they're doing that. They have that pre-release bit. We know where their commits are. We're looking at their Git repo. We're piping all of that into the build service. We're testing it all in OpenQA. So when they hit that button to do the release, we already know it all works. We're just maybe building the released sign tables, with everything already done, everything's already fixed, and one quick validation pass later, we're out. So that's exactly how we can do day zero Tumbleweed, day one Tumbleweed, like GNOME updates and stuff like that. And same with LibreOffice. It's there. We're doing it. openSUSE is really, really proud of doing that. It really needs to have good collaboration with upstreams. Some upstreams are kind of less transparent with what they're doing, and we can't do that with those ones. But yeah, when it works really nicely.
So what is your either advice or frustration with those few upstreams that are not?
Well, it's a case of style in some cases. Some projects don't want that kind of extra bureaucracy of having to have a sort of a timeline or a schedule to work with others, and they just want to do their own thing. If they're just going to do that and release whenever they release and not tell anybody in advance, then they're making it harder for us to adopt that stuff quicker. If you do want to take that extra step of maybe having a bit of a release process, nothing too heavyweight, because then of course that also makes things complicated for us of then having to liaise and deal with that kind of beastie thing. But something lightweight, like the GNOME project does, like the KDE project now does, of making it clear to distributions and stuff. This is basically when we're freezing the repositories, we're then just going to be validating and tuning stuff up afterwards. We can then know, okay, we can start taking those sort of those late RC tables and get all of our testing and all our work done. So then it's really easy for us to just do that last step with those last minute changes. And in fact, with GNOME and KDE, we've got examples where we found those last minute bugs that caused that thing to slip a little bit at the end, and that's how it's meant to work. It draws extra collaboration into those upstream projects, which we can't just do if they're kind of behind their wall releasing blindly afterwards.
You have been openSUSE for so long time, and we talked about how rolling. What are the pain points that you still see with Linux distribution that you say, damn, we could have fixed it, we can fix it, but we are not able to fix it because of XYZ problems? What do you think of that?
The trickiest one, definitely by far, no doubt, is proprietary drivers, hardware with only proprietary drivers. That is an absolute flipping nightmare that really it needs to be fixed somehow, and the only way of really doing that is hardware vendors either stop having bloody proprietary drivers or make it easier for us to work with. We've got a couple of cases, unfortunately not on the hardware side, but with other sort of proprietary software where companies have been quite permissive and said, okay, this is closed source, but here's the blobs and here's sort of a good friendly API around it, and makes it very easy for us to work with and sort of modify it so we can at least integrate it in the distro. That really is something that those hardware vendors, if they care about Linux, if they care about open source, they need to work with us more on that, especially on something like Tumbleweed, where we're tracking the upstream kernel so quickly. They're constantly left in the dirt behind, and it's a real nightmare. It drives me crazy.
Okay. And the second part of the problem is, though openSUSE's own focus may be moving towards professionals, when I go to any of those commercial, or not commercial, but more enterprise conferences, all I see is MacBooks everywhere.
Yep.
Even I carry a MacBook now. I was talking to Matthew Miller from Fedora, and I asked the same question. He said, "Yeah, we are trying also somehow to replace those Macs with the Linux system." So, what is your, what do you think about that? How to?
Well, I mean, I had a Mac in the past, both an iMac and a MacBook, and in both cases I just shoved openSUSE on it, and it worked pretty much out the box. So the hardware and the OS of choice is a different thing. But in the case of sort of choosing your own OS, I mean, it's a case of whatever works for you. It's not. We've never been ultimately religious in openSUSE that you must use our distro, even if you're using our family. Like OBS is like the grand expression of that, where OBS builds for a bunch of different distros, and it's always been true that we have contributors who are obviously contributing to our projects coming from another operating system. And in fact, there's been presentations done this week where guys talking about how to contribute to openSUSE from their MacBook, and it's nice to see. It's not my personal choice. I really do not like OS X. I really don't like Windows. But then, like on things like Windows, of course, we've got the Windows services for Linux. You can install both openSUSE and SLE, straight from the Windows store there, and it's a full-blown openSUSE supported environment. So yeah, maybe that's something I'd like to see on Mac. Make it a little bit easier for those Mac users to kind of get in, to use the tools they want to kind of in an environment that they want.
But that is one of the reasons I use Mac. I mean, because I do a lot of video editing and I need more powerful, so I bought a Windows license. But the reason I use Mac is that I have the whole Unix, there.
Yep.
So I don't need to do the extra work that I have to do on Windows. Because natively, whether it's SSH or RC or whatever, I can do it. Plus, when I install Homebrew, I have access to everything, and all the utilities. No matter what you ask, it is there. All the languages are there, and then I can install Docker on Mac, and then I have everything. And that is why people kind of prefer also, because they get the whole Unix stack plus all the fun part, which is Adobe or whatever they want, they can throw it and work. So I think your approach is right. Use whatever tool works for you.
Yeah.
I see that you're wearing an Apple Watch, if I'm not wrong.
Indeed, you are.
So how do you sync with your desktop? Or that means you're using iPhone also to do the work, right?
Yep.
To sync it. So does iPhone work with Linux or not yet?
Not particularly.
I've not bothered.
Yeah, I've got my Nextcloud instance, and that's how I'm doing all of that, piping all that around.
And that is what I think. When sometimes people say, "Hey, once you move to this platform, you get locked," but there are so many ways you can find a way to get things done. I carry both iPhone and Samsung Note and Pixel, and people are like, I do it 3 times a day. Switch between the phones. So it's now let's not talk about technology, not talk about iPhone, not talk about openSUSE. Let's talk about you for a while. We have never talked about you. Okay. So when you are not, which I think is 24/7, not talking about openSUSE, what do you do in your free time?
Oh, I do an awful lot of cycling. I've really kind of got the cycling bug. So around Nuremberg, where I'm living, there's just absolutely wonderful countryside. So yeah, fair bit of just going out on the bike, enjoying the hills, enjoying the countryside. When the hills get too steep, then enjoying a walk. So it's a really nice hobby.
Anything else beyond that?
Well, no, because you see, not particularly in the sense of I have landed in this weird bit where openSUSE is my job, but for the 10 years before I was hired by SUSE, openSUSE is my hobby, and I my job at SUSE isn't just openSUSE. I do all the cubic stuff as well. So I have that kind of split brain, and it keeps me sane. So I still keep a good chunk of the openSUSE stuff I'm doing, at least psychologically as hobby, so it's still my passion.
And since you mentioned it, so I think we have to go back to the work part, and that is that you also change roles within SUSE.
Yes.
So tell me what are you like? What is your new role?
I have the most awesome generic job title in all of SUSE. I'm a Linux distribution engineer at SUSE. That's like saying I'm a human on planet Earth.
Are you a rolling release man?
No. Just Linux distribution engineer. Like I could do any distribution. It's really funny. But I'm in the coolest team name. So the team I'm in is the Future Technology team. So we're the team.
Future Technology team.
Yeah, the Future Technology.
Who came up with the name?
I guess my boss or his boss did. Yeah, it's basically I think we originally just like the prototyping team. Doing an awful lot of sort of research and development on the latest and greatest stuff, coming up with a lot of the ideas for what where SUSE wants to be going, seeing how viable they are, quite often knocking out prototypes for it, and then generally not being expected to be the ones fully implementing their prototype and handing it over to somewhere else to get finished. And that's kind of where a lot of the stuff I'm doing in Cubic sort of comes from. It's also where my colleague Ignaz is working on transactional updates, and that's sort of one of the kind of key things that's come out of the team. It's a relatively new team, so we're still starting. And of course, guys like Dominic, who's part of the team, because Tumbleweed is where all of SUSE's future technology is going to end up, so it makes sense to be in there.
So did you have to relearn or de-learn anything, or you just
it's a fun challenge. So I mean, one of the reasons why I moved to the team is I was in QA previously. I wanted to kind of move more into the development side of things, and that's something I'm still learning and still sort of actively seeking. And what's been kind of weird and fun is instead of recently I've kind of been just working in hands in 20 different pies all at the same time, all drawing from all of my breadth of experience in different parts. So my knowledge from QA is really helping with the open QA integration with Cubic and Tumbleweed and making the CI there working fine. My openSUSE experience has really been helpful with I've done some really major changes to how openSUSE is using BTRFS and how a lot of our packages are using locations in the file system and moving things like the RPM database around, all the kind of thing which a fresh engineer would have a really hard time doing. But given I've been an openSUSE guy for so long, I know who to talk to and know where to post stuff on the mailing list and know to kind of how to move that around. That these sort of big changes, which could be really dramatic, get the whole kind of community behind, and they've made it really easy for me. So it's been
so many people you can threaten or bribe anybody and get it done.
Somewhat, yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. So anything else exciting that happened in this release, or you want to talk about?
Yeah. So yeah, in this release, the kind of extra, it was a late feature. I snuck it into Leap 15, almost after the release. The release candidate.
So you broke rules?
Again, like I was talking about earlier, they bent them, know who to talk to and that kind of thing. But basically, we took the transactional update feature that's in Cubic and made a whole new system model, so effectively a different way of running your Leap or your Tumbleweed machine. So it's using the same transactional update mechanism that you get in Cubic. So read-only root file system, so much more kind of cat instead of pet centric, much more kind of IoT friendly, of just have a server with a reduced capability to modify what you want, not actually removing it, because you can always make your changes. And then having a nice, clean, atomic or transactional update mechanism where, there's no changes to the running system. You don't want to change your running system. And then you just patch your system, get the changes that get those changes applied to a new BTRFS subvolume, so all kind of parked in a new location, fresh, ready to be used. Then when you next reboot, all those changes are applied and validated by a systemd service we have called Health Checker. So if it all goes horribly wrong, that service can actually throw away the snapshot and your system goes back to running immediately. So I'm using it for my my Intel computer stick running in the back of my TV, doing actually retro gaming and the like. Just so I can leave it running on the Wi-Fi, it can patch itself, it reboots itself in the middle of the night, it just always works. It's running Tumbleweed, so I always get the latest of everything. I'm going to do the same with in fact, I'm probably going to do the same with all of my servers. So my Leap 42.3 server running my blog on rootcoder.de, that's going to be wiped away and put on transactional and going that way, because it's less effort, it's easier to look after, and it just works. And it's that nice cross-pollination between Cubic and there. That's it's part of openSUSE, it's part of both distributions, and I can't promise this because, of course, this is SUSE corporate, but it's also possibly going to end up as a feature in a future SLE service pack, which is really kind of cool.
What do you mean by that?
So having an option for having a transactional SLES server.
So how different would it be from the atomic update models that were like something? It is almost similar.
Yeah, they're similar, but the main difference, the really exciting part, I guess, is most of the atomic update models come at like quite an interesting cost. Not just the rebooting cost, but like, you have a limited software selection. There's only a certain number of packages or OS trees or whatever available. So they're narrow use case, or like no option for third-party software installation and stuff like that. Because we're still using packages, because we've just taken the existing technologies and implemented them in an atomic way, you can install whatever the heck you want on these arrangements.
Yeah, I mean, the reason was for like, even for case of Cubic, container, the whole point was that you are installing packages as containers, so you don't have to do that.
Yeah,
that's what the whole point.
That's what we did with
Cubic. But what I'm saying is that the model is same, of course the implementation is different because the target.
Yeah, the model's the same, but of course the way we did it with Cubic, the assumption that you're going to do everything in containers doesn't have to be true. You can do everything in packages still. So in the case of transactional Leap and transactional Tumbleweed, you can keep on using the packages. You're not bound to being forced to use
you brought the
containers.
same model, but instead of container here you have packages. It's the same. So yeah, that's interesting. And to be honest with you, 1 year ago I was working on stories where like will this influence in both SUSE and no, that's totally different thing. But I knew that eventually that will happen, and finally that is happening. Anything else you would like to talk about, or I think we have touched on a broad topic.
Yeah, I talk too much. So I think I'm going to say no for a change.
Right, but I do think that you need to get more hobbies. The cycling is not enough.
Well, okay, retro gaming as well, but that's.
Do you watch TV?
No, I got rid of my cable box lately.
So you don't watch Netflix or whatever?
I occasionally watch Netflix.
Have you seen Black Mirror?
Yeah, I've seen Black Mirror. Not the latest, not the full of the latest series, but yeah.
But that is exciting. It's
a
very
damn good show.
It's
and terrifying because so many of those things are coming true. That's the problem.
The problem with the Black Mirror is that you are not suddenly in the dystopian future words happening right now.
Yeah.
And it's more realistic. Yeah, so it's kind of scary. But that's where kind of when I look at that word, there are no options. So, but when I look at Linux and open source, at least there are options. People who don't want it, they still can. But the whole world is beyond US, or UK. So there are like billions of people in.
That's two countries that I don't really spend too much time looking at anymore.
Yeah, so there are a whole world which is still kind of. So anyway, Richard, thanks for talking to you today, and thanks for having me here at the conference.
Always happy to.
And I have many interviews today to be done. And I'm loving it so far, though I'm very much tired because of jet lag, but it's a great conference.
No worries.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.